never stop exploring. That's a motto of hike equipment brand North Face. And the reason why I'm saying that is that my guest today is the author of this motto. His name is Sam Pond. I met Sam a year and a half ago, and he's definitely someone who impacted my life for the better. Sam is someone who built a successful career in marketing, and when in his 50s, he went through a very difficult time where his body collapsed and things were. He went through a breakdown basically. But the interesting thing is that he says that this was one of the best things that could happen because it was the first impulse to a massive transformation that he went through, realization of how much nice guy there was with him, and embarking on a journey of self-discovery and just healing towards the better. Sam is basically twice my age, and I'm learning from him a lot. And I like spending time with him because of the playful energy that he's radiating, and because of the honesty and the vulnerability that he's just not afraid to share and not afraid to show. So I really enjoyed this interview, and you guys have fun. Can you share your story? How did you become who you are today, and what were the most important milestones?
I try to talk about that. I've always get asked about this, and I think, how the hell am I going to encapsulate 64 years into a conversation? In a nutshell, I grew up in a family that was kind of messed up. It looked really good on the outside, which was very much my mother's thing, is they make sure we all look like upstanding members of society. But the house was tense. Dad was a university professor and very, passive, very loving, but very passive. And mom was raging and had a narcissistic side and was pretty abusive. So I learned from a very early age, if I was really nice and made everybody feel better around me, especially as the middle child and the son, that's who I thought I was. So I became kind of the clown and the diplomat and the go-between. My parents would actually ask me as we grew up, rather than talking to my sisters who were struggling, they would talk to me about them. It was all messed up. It was really the perfect recipe for being a really nice guy. And it kind of worked, but as I look back on my life, I wasn't really feeling that much. I was really driven by my head. I was clever and I did clever things with my life, but boy, I wasn't really connected to my depths at all. But I'd functioned that way for, well over 50 years. So you can live a successful life with your head and your heart disconnected. Mm. Then about 10 years ago, I had a son. He was 13. I had a marriage which was, we were like two frogs. If you take a frog and you put him in boiling water, he'll just jump out. But if you put a frog in cold water and turn it up, he'll just die. And that was our marriage. We didn't know any better. She was a version of my mother and I was a version of her father, and I was just running away. I was just running away from the tension constantly until one day my body just said, all right, it's enough. And my body totally had a big fat meltdown, kind of like a nervous breakdown. But a friend of mine who's a Buddhist said that I didn't actually have a nervous breakdown. I had a shokuboku, which is a spiritual kick to the head from which your life will be changed forever.
I see.
And everything shut down. My body shut down. I couldn't see. I was in panic. It's a whole other podcast, but the details of it are intense. I ended up in a rehab center in the middle of New Mexico, where they introduced me to the idea of childhood trauma, that I had suffered, but I'd never allowed myself to suffer because I was the one who was keeping everything together.
Did you say you couldn't see, like you lost your sight completely?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I ended up in an airport hotel after frantic phone calls, and things were so bad with my wife, I couldn't go to her. I felt like I couldn't go to her. Everything was messed up.
Hmm.
So uh, it's a whole story.
I see.
But it's a great blessing. It's one of the great blessings of my life because I came out of there completely like scrubbed clean. And it was like, okay, restart of my entire life.
I see. Could you, when it was happening, what were you thinking? Like, what do you think is going on? Because, like, I guess you don't have many life experiences like this, right?
What did I think was going on? I had no idea. The pain in my body had been increasing over a few months. So I'd been to the hospital and the doctor, and they said nothing's wrong with you. Then, uh, hold on a second. Did I lose you?
No,
Something
no, I'm
happened.
here.
Okay. So something and that I was really, my things started getting really um, disconnected, and I really couldn't see, and my body ached. It was really, really intense, um, until the high point of it was, or the low point was, I'm getting so confused. My body is so much pain. I was so mentally confused that I remember sitting on my front steps of my house and looking down, and I had a hallucination that my front steps had turned into the swirling vortex of hell. And it was like there was all of my shames swirling around underneath me. All the mistakes, all the self-abusive voices, which I kept at bay, all my emotions. And I thought, oh, I don't have any idea what's going on.
I
But when
see.
I got to this recovery center, and there were people with all kinds of, there were ex-heroin addicts, and there was all people, and there was a place where childhood abuse was really it was very holistic in its way of looking at this. And they said that what happens when you're young and you are in either an abusive moment or a time in your life, that your head and your heart, which are like linked when you're a child, when this happens, they go pop, and then your heart gets buried and you live by your head. And you can live a successful life from your head. But I had the great fortune of my body saying, no, no, you're not going to live this way anymore. I'm shutting you down until you listen.
Mm.
And then after that, I tried everything. I tried Buddhist studies, somatics, landmark. It was like every month I was trying something new to feel better. And it wasn't until I started I met Zan and I started stepping into the world of women, and I was introduced to my core wound, which was around women. And that was that was the key that started to unlock things for me.
I see. For those who are listening, Zan is Zan Perion. We had an interview several episodes ago. I see. So, what changed? What was the thing that? What was the belief that shifted the most, or the experience that was shaping your next development?
I'm not sure there was anything particular. Just getting more and more connected to my heart was the first path. Once I started understanding, because I was such a nice guy, that I was really putting women first and making sure they were taken care of, and I was always attracting broken women. That was because I had a hero complex from my childhood. I was going to be a hero. I was going to be the hero everywhere. And if I could be a hero to a woman, then she'll love me. And that led to disastrous relationships in my life. Because broken women are just like, oh, him.
Yeah, like searching for fixers.
Searching for fixers. And I was happy to fix.
Mm. I see. Well, I'm curious about, I think it's interesting that you said that even though there were these experiences in your childhood, it seemed normal. And I think this is like the slippery floor of the nice guy syndrome, that if we feel like if for instance me as a nice guy, I feel that we appear okay to the outside, there's nothing really wrong with me. Like like everything is perfect, even though I'm stuck in my head. I have no connection to my feelings. I have nowhere to know from. That it's not normal, or like life can be just so much more with if I allow myself to feel more, even of the bad emotions, or like the negative, the lower ones. So can you, like, how would you define trauma in these terms? Like, what was the trauma that you went through that you think was shaping your life to the point that you had this breakdown?
Well, the trauma was was really through my mom. And by the way, I love my mom, and she's still alive, and we have a really good relationship now. But back then, the trauma it was like walking on eggshells inside the house. And so to be constantly aware, and to be constantly aware of my mother's moods, to constantly make adjustments around her. And it seemed like a very successful way, because I was good at it. I was good at diffusing tension. I could make people in my house laugh. So it was I just never learned how to be really clear, how to say no, how to set boundaries. That was one thing I learned in this recovery center, what a boundary was. I must have asked a dozen times, now wait a minute, let's go over this boundary thing. What are personal boundaries? Because I had no concept of it. Concept. Then, yeah. So there was no specific traumatic event, although there was 3 or 4 that do stand out, where I was really shut down hard in a moment when I'm most vulnerable or proud of something I'd accomplished, and just got squashed. So don't feel proud. The message from my house constantly was, don't get too full of yourself. I must have heard that 1,000 times. So it created this kind of unhealthy humility.
I see.
To this day, when I feel pride, my stomach clenches. Like a worthiness thing. So
yeah, it's like when someone uses the notion of ego to manipulate you. So that, like, no, like, that's like, if you want something, that means that you're in your ego and you have to adapt to what the other person wants. It's kind of evil. I mean, they're all doing it in the best intention, but it's really not comfortable.
Yeah, I think it was how it seemed like for everybody a reasonable way to live and grow up. And then I realized, when I was growing up in the 60s, went to high school and college in the 70s, that there's no place to turn. There's no information about anything. There's no information about sex or self-development. There was est. And that seemed like a joke to us.
Est, what is est?
That's Werner Erhardt's. That's what Landmark Training is based on. It was a big kind of culty, abusive culty thing with very smart teachings. Look up Werner Erhardt and EST. I can't remember what EST stands for, but.
Okay. Yeah, I think what we talk about I think is extremely important to increase awareness around this area, because like I've been a nice guy the vast majority of my life. And I thought that, like, I was walking on eggshells around people all the time. And I would feel that I'm failing in moments when I'm not adapting enough. And it was extremely draining. Like, I would be out in the social setting. I would be able to tell jokes, but with every joke, it felt like I'm risking this disapproval if no one laughs. And if no one does laugh, that was like a fucking nightmare. It's like I could also hear this. I could also have these clenches in my stomach. Or another example was when I was playing guitar, and there was a group of like 15 people, and everyone was singing, and I was kind of like leading the group. And then when I stopped and I put the guitar in the guitar case, I would get a stomach cramp because of the massive contrast between the amount of validation I have received and then nothing. It was crazy, and I thought I'm the weirdest person I know, like the weirdest person that exists because of this. And now it makes perfect sense.
It sounds similar to me because I always lived with an intense self-consciousness. Like, what am I doing? Are people receiving? Did I make a mistake? But I was able to mask it with kind of an affability and a you can't touch me, everything's fine. But I could not smoke pot. Everybody around me was smoking pot. To this day, if I have a hit of pot, I just said all of my focus goes on me, all of my flaws. But when I do it now, it's like, oh, I'm kind of high, but I'm like, there are the voices. There they are. So it's different relationship.
Nice. So, I would say, as a recovered nice guy, or recovering nice guy, or as Dr. Glover puts it, what do you like? What were some of the first steps that you have undertaken that helped you the most?
Well, we'll talk about fearless, but once I stepped into the fearless world and really started getting introduced to this flow of feeling that was running through me, whether it was grief or my anger, that was the first step. I mean, I had no idea how much I had been repressing or suppressing. And along with that comes a sense of self and a sense of anger. Anger has been such a powerful emotion, even though I have yet to really find the depths of my anger. But once I started feeling it, it's like, wow, this is power. I can say no. So I practiced saying no for a while. And now when I say no, even if it's in a gentle way to someone who wants to get money from me, when I say no, everything just stops. So powerful. So the path to that was just completely through my emotions and finding the power that was in me to be non-reactive to the world and just let things come to me and go, oh, this is my boundary here. Yes, no. That's the core of it, the ability to say no.
Mm. How did you deal with the guilt that came up with saying no? Because like that was my experience, that was something I had to deal with. So I'm curious if you went through something similar, maybe.
I didn't really deal with, I mean, the shame is always pervasive. It always shows itself, it always rears its ugly head. I never had that much guilt about saying no. I mean, once I really learned how to say no.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a little bit popped up, but I felt the power of it. I went, oh, this is really interesting. Not much guilt.
I see. And so, like, I'm just curious if there's if there's something specific that works, because starting to say no, it's like what Brian says, that like it's the most difficult in the beginning. Like the space rocket burns the most fuel during the start.
Yeah.
Once you get going, then it's somewhat easier. I'm just curious how to start with it, because in my experience, like fearless also changed my life and changed the way I perceive tension and saying no and really drawing boundaries. And in my case, it was having someone with whom I could talk after I said no multiple times, or after I have faced tension that would be otherwise overwhelming, like having a coach or having a friend with whom we go through the same thing, to somehow ground that it's normal, that it's like I'm not evil person because I refused to do someone else's job. And this kind of this is what helped for me. What was your experience with shame?
You know, I think that it comes down to knowing what you want. I've had so many calls, with clients, and really the first question is like, what do you want? What do you want out of life? And probably 70% they waffle. They say, I want to be free. Yeah, but what do you want? Of course, we all want to be free. What do you want? And a lot of men can't even say that they want to have a gangbang or a girlfriend, or just say something. Mm-hmm. So because there's so much shame around wanting something. And then there's the fear and the grief of not being worthy of wanting something.
I see.
So it really takes a while. What do you want? Say anything. Say what you want in this world. Because like with me, if I went to a restaurant and I ordered a tuna salad sandwich and they accidentally gives me a chicken salad sandwich, I would say, oh, well, I like chicken salad too. Okay, I'll eat that. Yeah, but I didn't fucking order a chicken salad sandwich, I ordered tuna.
Mm.
So to, and nice guys do this constantly with everything. So you can start to experiment in the tiniest ways. If someone gives you incorrect change, count the change and say, you owe me a penny.
Yeah.
Small things. That starts to empower you. Then the big stuff becomes easier and easier. What do you want?
Yeah. I remember this exercise. I don't remember who recommended it to me, but it was doing these things on purpose, even in situations where they weren't factual. So I would get change from having a coffee, and I would say that like there's not the right amount of change, just to expose myself to the situation. And they would tell me, no, it's the right amount of change. But I made them recount it. And then I then I received them again, and I felt guilty as fuck. It was a nightmare during the first 5 times.
Yeah.
And then when it got comfortable, I started to do the changes in other social settings or at work.
Yeah.
So now you're a coach for men. You're also coaching coaching with Fearless.
Yeah.
What was your previous career? What did you do before that?
Well, my previous careers were a extension of my childhood. I was an actor, a Shakespearean actor, all the way through my like teens all the way through my 20s. I was in New York and rep theaters around the country, and it was fairly successful. But you know, as I look back on it, it was just a big fat way of getting validation from the outside world. And anybody who's an actor has some broken part that the applause and the adulation feels like love. So it was a way of looking for love. I mean, it wasn't certainly a waste of time, but because I was kind of good at it. And then that led me to a career as a writer, and then was in advertising for 30 years as a writer and a creative director. Again, using these childhood coping skills, these survival skills of entertaining people.
Mm-hmm.
And about 3 years ago, I was in the middle of a big project, and I'd been independent for a long time, and as a writer, producer, and one day I was in the middle of a big project, and I stopped myself and asked myself, why am I still doing this? I've been doing this a long time. Why am I doing this? And the answer in my head was your reputation. You got a really good reputation. You got to keep up your reputation. And in that moment, I realized, oh, fuck. I'm only in this for my ego. It just hit me like, and from that moment, it was like everything just dropped out of my hands like a bag of wet cement, and the phone didn't ring again. It's rung twice in the last 3 years. Like
wow.
The universe heard.
Mm-hmm.
And then that set me like, oh no, then if I'm not a writer and a director and an actor, what am I? So had to come up with an answer. I wrote screenplays for a while, and I did all that, and it wasn't like I just didn't want to do it. I didn't care. I didn't care about being famous anymore. So it was kind of a lost time. And then, do you know Erica Angelo?
No, but I've heard about her from your work.
Yeah, she's really great. And I did some coaching with her. She coached me. She was on me about being a coach. I said, what are you talking about? Why? I had nothing to teach. And she would say, you have no idea who you are. You have no fucking clue. And I said, Erica, I think I'm too selfish and lazy to teach other men, coach other men on my own personal journey. She just laughed at me. And then I started, and then I got like, oh, this feels aligned. So now my life is like, I just spend all my time thinking about other guys and what I can teach and who can I coach. It just feels more flowy now. For the first time, because everything was an effort before. This feels kind of like effortless.
Yeah. You sound pretty humble about the marketing career, but from what I know, you had some pretty big accomplishments. Like even though you like drove all that through the nice guy and through the patterns, you had some pretty big successes, right?
Yeah, yeah, I did. Um,
Can
it's
you
funny
name?
to look back on advertising successes. Oh yeah, I won dozens of international awards. I won Clio's and Cannes Lions, and I mean all kinds of things. Do you know the North Face? That's my my big claim to fame.
Yeah,
The North Face. Uh,
trekking company.
yeah, yeah, outdoor equipment, and it was a account of mine when I had my own agency, and their slogan, which is on everything, is I wrote called "Never Stop Exploring," and I
Oh,
wrote that.
really?
Yeah, and
Wow.
yeah, it was really funny. It's a long story, but even Brian, a couple of weeks ago, we were in LA, and we see a bunch of teenage guys hanging around. One had a "Never Stop Exploring" sweatshirt, and Brian said, "I dare you to go up and ask him if you want him to sign his sweatshirt." So I did. It was really
You
funny.
did?
Oh yeah, he was. I said, "You know that thing on your back?" He said, "No." It says, "Never." I wrote that, and the teenagers were like, "Whoa, dude!" I said, "Yeah, you want me to sign your T-shirt, your sweatshirt?" And they go, "Yeah, man." Funny, I never tell anybody that. It seems so. Yeah, you're right. There's kind of a humility. There's a little not shame around being in advertising, but in the end, I realized I wasn't a consumer, and I didn't really care about the validation or shaming people into buying things that they don't really need to be happy.
Mhm.
And
Mm,
that was the big thing. I just wasn't aligned with it anymore. So
I see. I wanted people to know this, like also the accomplishment part of your marketing career, because it sounds like from the outside, if you just read the book, The Nice Guy, maybe not the book, but if you just hear someone talking about it, it sounds like it's impossible to achieve anything like with the nice guy syndrome. But the truth actually is the opposite. You can go very high. You can get like almost the top management or maybe even the top management, but it's going to be extremely draining and effortful and painful and tiring. And the very top is unreachable, I believe, because of the inability to take risks and just to like soothe oneself after all that effortful day, right? Like what do
really
you
true. Yeah, there's a lot of just a lot of tension. There's a lot of proving myself. There wasn't a lot of flow to it um, until I went independent. And then Brian asked me one day. He said, "Well, just think how successful you would have been if you'd known now what you knew then." I said, "Brian, I wouldn't have been in advertising. I wouldn't have needed it. I wouldn't have needed it. Who knows where I would have done." So
Mhm.
I don't know. Looking back is kind of funny. So
Have you ever think about this from some perspective of regret, like what life could have been if you had known some things some time ago?
I get asked that a lot about regret, and maybe I don't know myself yet well enough. I don't feel much regret. I really don't. I look back at my life and I really have met peace with I was doing the best with what I knew and I did what I could. I didn't have the knowledge or the skills or the awareness to be anything else. I think I did pretty well given all of my uh, lack of my misunderstandings about myself and about life. So,
Mhm.
yeah, was that a little pride there? Yeah, a little bit of pride. Yeah. Fuck humility.
Yeah, that's the way.
Yeah.
You,
But it was all like, well, I'll say that it was all charm based. I mean, that was one of the things that was keeping me from really diving into myself because I did have a natural, I called it charm. I mean, I could charm people into doing things. I could tease people into doing things. I could sell an insane advertising idea to a client because I could manipulate them to buy ideas which they were not comfortable buying. And
Mhm.
it was a little was a skill I grew up. I knew how to manipulate people,
Mm.
not for evil intentions, but had all these tricks up my sleeve.
Yeah, because if it's like if it's the only thing you know, how can you not use it, right?
Absolutely. So anybody who has regrets in life, yeah, I get it. I understand, but that's coming from a lot of unresolved grief
Mm.
and a lot of unresolved anger. Once you start to let those go, then you just realize, God. I was talking, one of my big realizations, having been married for 15 years and a tough divorce, that people are always saying, well, you got to forgive. Got to forgive yourself. You got to forgive her. And I'm like, well, I don't even know what that feels like. Would I just say I forgive you? And then I had a big realization that why do I need to forgive her if I don't blame her or blame myself? What's there to forgive? We were both doing what we could. And then it hit me like forgiveness is really arrogant. I'm up here, I'm forgiving you down there because you did wrong and I am better than you. So the whole notion of forgiveness to me is I don't even talk about it anymore. I just talk about
I see.
blame.
I see. So there must have been hurt made so that forgiveness can be made. And if there's like if it's just not there, like there's nothing to forgive.
Exactly. Yeah, that's how I like to see it. And then forgiveness is just a feeling rather than an act. I don't even think about forgiving anybody. I just don't blame them anymore.
Hmm. I'm asking about regrets because I think it's a fairly universal topic on all age, like in any age groups. Thinking about my own life, I also had regrets, and I'm like basically half your age, and I was having these thoughts like, well, what life would be like if I were studying at the university abroad instead of the one which is in my country, and so. But it doesn't really like the way I see it is that it all like the only important thing that matters is now. And
Yeah.
if I can that's what helps me. If I can get to the place that from now I can create how it's going to look like in the future, then it doesn't really matter what it was like before, because like in any age the only thing I'll have is now.
That's really true. And the path to really feeling that can't be in understanding it in your head. Even using words to talk about releasing blame on yourself or on the world or on other people it's more of a feeling. I mean, you can dive into your own blaming of yourself or blaming other people once you really feel that they were doing what they could. I was doing what I could. It's so simple. How could you do something that you didn't know? We're innocent. That's the thing. We're all innocent. At our core, we are tender, innocent beings that were doing the best that we could with what we know.
It feels like a lot of acceptance, the way you talk about that.
I think it's a lot of love. Yeah, I see love as the all expansive, enveloping thing. So developing love for yourself is, for me, the primary path. I end up talking about that all the time. So
yeah, that was actually exactly what I wanted to go to the next topic. So I'm glad you started it. You mentioned this. I saw you mentioning this with Erika Angelo, or like the lady you were talking about, and I heard you talking about that in the workshop the last time. So how do you perceive this topic of self-love? What changed in your life in this area?
It's the love was in growing up. While there was not a lack of love, it was tied to things. It was, but there wasn't an abundance. There was no sense of abundance. And I remember it was at a landmark event, and the guy said, the first thing he said was, "I love you all, and you probably think that's bullshit." I remember thinking, how can you love someone you don't know? How can you, that's bullshit. But it started to hit me that, and I remember it was about a year and a half or 2 years ago, I was just assisting in a fearless workshop, and Brian was doing a little talking, and then he said, "Yeah, then there's Sam. He always shows up to assist and, you know, help coach and on his own dime." And then he said to the group, he said, "And you know why he keeps showing up?" And I'm like, I'm standing in the back going, I wonder what he's going to say. Why do I keep showing up? And he said, "Because he loves you guys." And I really felt that. I went, that's exactly it. And so a lot of it's is like this unexplainable part. I had a big realization a year ago that, because I was really meditating on what love was, I just didn't understand it, or what it felt like, because I'd been chasing it all of my life. And I had this little syllogism in my head pop in. I said, well, love is abundant. Everybody says love is abundant. Okay, I believe that. I see proof of that all over. And the universe is abundant and expanding, and time-space is expanding into infinity, expansion. And I realized, oh, love is the expansive energy of the universe. This is the proof. For me, that was the understanding. And so now the formula is right down to love is expansion. Anything that's contracting is waiting to be loved.
I see.
So we can feel love for all sorts of things, but somehow we're always the last in line. But we all have the ability to love something. You can feel it. You can when you drop in, and even if it's just a sliver, if you start nursing that little sliver, it starts to expand and expand. I'm naturally kind of heart oriented, so the path was a little quicker for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to go through all the shit. I had to go through my grief and my anger and my lust and all of that in order. Because this is the way I see it: is that, you know, you have the heaviest vibration is apathy, right? I can't, hopelessness. And apathy is all the emotions, the lower emotions, stuffed into a gluey ball, right? And so it's like stuck and dense and contracting. Then you have peace, love, acceptance, all the way, and those are higher vibration. But that's also made of grief, fear, anger, lust, everything all the way up to it. So
Mm-hmm.
they're made of the same thing, except one is contracting and one is expanding. So to get out of apathy, can you invite expansion into apathy? It's like white light is made of every color.
Yeah.
But vibration is loose and expanding, expanding, expanding. And black is all the colors contracting, contracting, contracting. So if you choose expansion at what feels expansive, then you're tapping into love at every corner. It's a really simple formula.
Mm-hmm. So is that even like when you feel some of those like heavy emotions, you always see that through this lens of expansion, and you expand into it even though it's painful?
Yeah, we talk about, releasing, practice releasing. I stopped calling it releasing. I just call it loving. I just see it. Anything that has pain is like a wounded child, a child in pain. And I used to take that child and stuff him into a dark closet and say, well, good luck to you over there. Come out when you're ready. Which I guess was sort of how I grew up. That was how I grew up. And now when I sit with a heavy feeling, it's like I can feel my own version of of parental presence with it. Mm-hmm. So feminine is what nurtures it and says, it's okay, you're safe, you're safe. And the masculine is that presence. I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. I feel emotional saying that feeling you are safe, I'm here, and when you're ready to go head outside, explore, let's go. And it's that combination of energies which is so powerful. The masculine doesn't say, okay, are you done? You done crying? Come on, let's go. But the masculine says, let's go. The masculine has to say at some point, say, okay, that's enough, let's go.
Mm.
And then the feminine says, no, 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 he doesn't want to go. He's still crying.
Mm. It's really beautiful if you come to the point that you can give yourself this parental love that you lacked in the past, and that you can, it's kind of like you can be your own parent. It's actually your words. I love the expression.
Yeah. Yeah, I spontaneously, I took a client a year ago into a journey to find his wounded younger self. I don't know how it happened. We just started exploring this forest together, and he's telling me what he sees, and he sees a boy huddled, you know, in a cave, and he actually went and rescued himself. It was really powerful. Carried the boy out, and it was he was in his feeling imagination was rescuing himself through this visual journey that we were going on.
Yeah. When you have a client and you're working with a guy and you see he's a nice guy and he really wants to work on himself, but he's pushing and pushing and pushing from the head, and you really want to cultivate this feeling of self-love, what would be the first thing that you would advise, or how do you go around this challenge?
You know, coaching really shifted to me for me a few years ago when I stopped coming in with a plan or an idea or an advice or teaching, and I just showed up with nothing. I remember thinking, what if I showed up with nothing? And it got really powerful really fast, because it just dropped me into the sort of loving observance of what was going on. The first then from then is just keep inviting them to feel what's beneath that, what's beneath that. And their heads are so busy and they're explaining and they have stories, and then, oh yeah, that's a story, isn't it? And then a story. So it's just, coaching to me is listening with love and understanding primarily. Because if you tell him, hey, look, you're in your head, what's he going to do? Where's that information going to go? We have to create this fertile soil of emotional presence before that seed of wisdom or guidance or advice can like take root. Otherwise, you're trying to plant a seed in cement. Say, hey, you're in your head. Why don't you stop being in your head? You know how in your head you are? And then the seed just bounces off the pavement. They go, yeah. It's got no place to go to. So they have to feel their grief, and they have to feel their fear first. And it's not pleasant, but then they stop talking, and then there's silence. And this is where inner wisdom comes from. It doesn't come from thinking. It comes from someplace else.
It appears somewhere.
Yeah, but when you guide a guy into feeling, then you can just say, I'd like on a call, or if I'm working with a client, if I don't do that 45 minutes of listening and questioning and asking and dropping, any advice for him is going to be meaningless. But when that soil is really fertile, and I just say, if I say one thing, you can feel it on the call. It just goes, and the guy goes, oh, huh.
Mm.
That's always the sweet spot, when the guy just goes, huh. As opposed to, I get it. Oh, I totally understand. God, if I just did this and my past and this and this, it's like, oh, he's not getting where. It's like bouncing around inside of his head.
Stay pumping in a way.
Yeah. The real shifts come from an inner wisdom goes beyond words.
That's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to put it, because, and then if it's not like a hyped, and it's linked to some of the higher emotions, then it sticks. Like even if he thinks about it or writes it down or whatever, it just sticks.
Yeah, and it expands inside of them.
Mm.
The last thing you want to do is give a guy advice, and that's what they want, right? Hey, so what do I say to a girl? What happens if this happens in the bedroom? And you can tell them, and it'll just go ding a ding a ding a ding a ding a ding a ding. But I want to shift their entire perspective and their view of what reality is.
Mm. I see. So I wonder how are you doing these days? Like how would you evaluate your life right now? Like your current activities, being a coach, like you're making a major shift if you compare it with 10 years. I'm interested in the perspective of basically being I know you talked about that, but like being a successful person to the outside in marketing, and now doing like really deep internal work with guys on seeing the world differently, on doing like the feeling-based work with men. How does it feel like? How is it different?
As I mentioned earlier, is that it feels like I have alignment in my life where things aren't hard anymore. My life in general over the last few years, Brian was interviewing me, and I found myself saying, you know, that was my 63rd year. That was the best year of my life. And I said that with no resistance. It's absolutely true. Not that my outside world has changed a whole lot. I mean, I do see, you know, women who I'm very fond of and beautiful, and sex is getting great. And, but my day-to-day life is just more, it just has more peace to it. It's hard to say. It's hard to speak, but like if I have, like yesterday I had 5 coaching calls. I had 5 of them. I thought, oh God, damn, that's going to be a long day. How am I going to do that? Where am I going to get the energy for that? The 5th one happened 5 hours later, and I went, wow, is there another one? Just feels more, everything feels more flowy. I still am really personally interested. I'm really happy with this decision to join Fearless, really. In fact, I had coaches who, you know, were in the life coaching, seduction coaching, you know, world outside of therapy. And they all said, why would you take that job? You got your own coaching business. Why would you take it? Why would you give your gifts to somebody else? And I remember thinking, yeah, that's true. I understand that. But the reason I'm going to do it is because it feels right. Didn't make a lot of rational sense. But in doing that, I have stepped into more and more tension, the possibility of moving down to LA, more travel, working in a larger group, working with concepts that aren't my concepts, but I'm making them I'm finding now through my lens, the concepts of, or the principles of Fearless filtered through me are me. So I really like that feeling. So it's, yeah, so there's a lot of my own self-expression in it, which I didn't see coming. I thought, oh, I'm a fearless robot with fearless principles, but that's not how it works over there. So it was all in my head.
I'm really happy for you, Sam. Like it's really inspiring to see how you can make such a dramatic change, and how to make such a dramatic change in basically in how many years? When did this thing with breakdown happen?
10 years. Yeah, I stopped drinking and restarted my life. And, you know, the first 3 or 4 years were basically unraveling, you know, from a divorce and taking care of my son. And then it wasn't really the really deep, but all that was deep personal work too. But it has, yes, in the last couple of years, it's really You know, it's like that compounding interest. Like, Jesus, how much longer is this self-development going to take? And then all of a sudden, I've swept up in the last 2 years, but now I'm here, and now I'm going to explore the next
Mm.
compound interest until I become Jesus.
Okay. Will you then walk on the water as well?
I'm going to walk on the water. Yeah. I
What's
remember thinking over those 10 years how much I was desperately looking to feel better, and how much I was searching for things. In spirituality, I studied all sorts of spiritual practices and beliefs, and they weren't really going deep because I was really looking to just feel better. And now that I'm more embodied in my life, I'm just, there's more flow, I feel more grounded. Now my spiritual curiosity has really blossomed to something that I'm not looking to heal myself,
Mhm.
not seeking anything. And now things are beginning at that side of my life. It's getting really, it's really weird walking down the street sometime thinking, is this real? Maybe this isn't real.
I remember what was the exercise you were talking about? Like was it the radical loving or like extreme loving?
Yeah. 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 The radical love experiment. Did you ever try it?
I thought about it a few times, but I was always in my house, so I never did it outside.
Oh, you got to do it in your house. Yeah. The idea is to walk around the world, your house outside, and love everything, but not just like, I love you, like, no, I love you. No, it's insane, unreasonable, Jim Carrey, batshit crazy, maniacal love for everything that arises in your consciousness. And if you do that for 20 or 30 minutes, just walk down the street and and you feel the embarrassment, you feel the shame, you feel everything, and you can just love that too. And you just walk around loving everything. And then finally I knew I'd lost my mind when I tripped on a crack on the sidewalk. And you know, when you trip on a crack on the sidewalk, you usually look at the crack and go, ah. Like, if people are watching, it's like, it wasn't me, it was a crack in the sidewalk. I turned to the crack in the sidewalk and I turned down and I go, oh, crack. I love you. You woke me up. Maybe I wasn't paying attention, and you're just a crack, and you used to be a sidewalk, now you're a crack. And I realized, oh shit, I've lost my mind. Life is so much more interesting when you walk around on the verge wondering, am I crazy? Maybe this is insane to wonder if all this is real. Well, I'll just go with that.
Yeah, it's like there are so many of exercises like this. I was doing one with, I'm not sure where I found it. I think maybe it was Zen's book, where he says just go around the city, look at people, and think what makes you feel curious about them,
Yes.
and what would you compliment about them. And I was walking in Prague for about 40 minutes, and after 40 minutes, I was almost crying because I just felt amazing. I felt, I really felt inspired, and I was like, at that moment, I realized that the people are not the way they are, but they are the way I see them, and I can totally change the way I see them just by the focus and the intent I make when I look at them. And this was just 40 minutes. No one talked to me. I didn't talk to anyone, and it was life changing.
I totally get it. You're challenging your lens of the world, or you're inviting a new lens. People all the time will walk around and say, God, you're so lucky to live in San Francisco. Got so many beautiful women there. And they're from London. Go, what are you talking about? There's beautiful women all over. What are you talking about? But I was having a lunch with a bunch of life coaches in London. This is the London story about 2 years ago. And we were at a big conference, and we were all talking about girls around the table. Because, you know, if you're in the seduction dating world, you always want to talk about girls rather than business. So we talked about girls, and the guy from London said, God, you know, you guys are so lucky to live in Barcelona and Madrid and San Francisco. Women there are beautiful. In London, the women are, I think he said, self-entitled bitches. And they're not that good looking. And we were like, Alfredo and I have been walking around for 2 days talking to women, like all these beautiful, open-hearted women from London. And so I challenged him on I said, look, we're coaches. Can I challenge your perspective? So I talked to him, and he said, yeah. Maybe my lens is off. Then he said, but Sam, you have to understand that women in England are self-entitled bitches and they're not that good looking. And he couldn't even see his lens. So what you were doing was inviting yourself through your lens and to see your world through beauty. We have that choice every moment of our lives.
True.
Little slivers, the gratitude I have, the love I have for things around me, appreciation for things. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be the world's greatest sunset. Just like you, the old lady in that hat. Gosh, she wears that hat. It's good.
Yeah. Sam, we're running out of time. Before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you, what are your plans for the near future? This is like a job interview question. Where do you see yourself in 3 years? No, this is a joke. I'm just curious what you're up to for what's coming up for you.
Okay, in my professional coaching life, I love where it's going. I want to keep expanding. I like being more courageous in what I'm doing, like really saying what I like. I was just telling you, I started my little YouTube channel, and even saying little, I've just diminished it. I'm making an effort to make a video every day so I can get comfortable and speak without scripting things in my head. So I want to keep expanding and getting bigger and bolder and challenge all those little voices that are just saying, oh, you're not Zan Perion or you're not Brian, but I'm beginning to see that I have something so unique to offer, and I'm just getting a hint of what that is. And I want to step into the tension of really growing into that. That to me is really exciting and scary. And I don't know what that means in some ways. I really am curious about finding one last great love in my life. And I'm curious why she hasn't shown up. And I feel the little voices in me saying, well, you're not ready. Or you're not this, you're not this, you're not this. But I am being very successful in the women that I do see. That was a big shift for me, is once I realized that I had okay, I'm not in love with her, but sex is great, we have a great time, and I had this little shield around me. I thought, what if I just let that, and the shield was protecting me and her from it going too far, and then one day I said, well, why don't I just love any woman I see, just fall in love with them. Just fall in love with who's in front of me, and changed everything. So I'm interested in, I don't know if I have to find this woman or if she's just going to show up, but I'm feeling kind of surrendered and peaceful about it right now.
Sam, thank you so much for sharing and for being really vulnerable about the way you talked about your life and topics and what's going on in your life right now and in the past. I really appreciate that. And where can people, or where can guys follow you if they want to reach out to you or they want to find your YouTube channel?
You can, if you do the @Sam Pond coaching, you can pretty much find anything that I'm doing. But my website is sampond.com.
Okay.
And otherwise, there's bits and pieces of me all over the place. So if anybody wants to talk, they can reach out to me at sam@sampond.com, and I'd be happy to chat, find out what's going on.
Perfect.